Okay, Brennan Jenkins, tell us a little bit about yourself if people don't know who you are. Where are you from? What do you do?
Hey, yeah, I'm lived in Edmonton pretty much my whole life. Like I was born in Winnipeg, but don't, moved here shortly after.
What?
Uh,
I
so,
didn't know that.
um, really? Or I
Uh,
can't tell if you're,
I kind of maybe I did. I didn't know it in this
yeah,
moment enough that that was a
okay.
that was a
That just
genuine.
didn't sound genuine at all.
It sounded like a cartoon. No,
Every fact about me, huh? Okay. Anyway,
I'm a man.
yeah.
What?
um, so I've been at Eaglemont Church for however long it's been there in Beaumont, so like 12, 13 years. My dad's the
15.
pastor.
15.
15?
15
Oh
years.
my
Yeah.
gosh. Um, okay, so long time. Went to Vanguard right out of high school. Then graduated from the worship program, and then now at Eaglemont, I'm the worship and young adults pastor.
Right. And during your time at Eaglemont, before you became a pastor, you worked with me.
Yeah.
Whereas I got there, I was the youth pastor there. I think I started 2014, which feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
back.
So I just graduated from grade 12. So I was a youth leader for your first year.
You were 18, so
Yeah.
basically you were a youth leader and intern slash staff through my entire time there. And then the moment I finally got you hired, I had worked on it for literally been like scheming to try and get you more hours every year. And I was like,
Which I
fine, like
appreciate.
literally the day that we announced you getting hired on was the day that I announced I quit and moved to district. And actually, I think that will be my greatest
Yeah.
regret in ministry when I'm like 70 years old and like maybe they're hopefully I've done enough that like at a district conference they want to interview me or ask me like what was your biggest mistake, and I'd be like I never got to do a staff meeting as a staff with Brennan Jenkins.
Yeah, I know it's true.
That's
Like
my
we,
broken heart.
yeah, like we worked together, but we didn't both get to be pastors at the same time,
No,
which would have been a lot of fun.
but we both worked in the youth department. That was kind of the
Yeah.
whole that was the whole thing. So you were basically one of my, except for that one year when you abandoned us to go for your internship to the Park Church, which I've in
Yeah.
fairness, I think I actually encouraged you to go to that specific church. I was like looking and I was like, that's a good one. You should go with that one. So I was
Yeah.
by
I
no means
already,
against it.
yeah, I sort of already had a connection with John Gregg there, so it was someone I sort of already knew, so then it worked out well. And
Yeah,
then John Cruz got hired there, and it was great working with him.
it's always nice working with a friend.
Yeah, it
a
was
lot of
awesome.
a lot of pastors don't get that. They
Mhm.
they kind of have to be on an island, or like there's some youth pastors that I never really had to because we connected pretty quick, and then as you kind of got older, we went from kind of to be actual friends, right?
Yeah.
But for some guys or girls, you go to a place and like it's like a 68-year-old lead pastor, which there's nothing wrong with that. But then you're like an 18, well, I guess you wouldn't be 18, but you're like 22,
Yeah.
and there's nobody else, and you go to staff meetings and it's like, yeah, no one else really gets what I'm talking about here, right? Like like you go to staff. I remember hearing from one younger leader who was in a meeting, and this is like super recently, and it wasn't the lead, but one of the older staff was like, there's this new thing called a GIF, and it's actually like a moving picture, but it's not a video, and it's unbelievable. And like
I didn't I didn't know what you were saying. I was like, "Gife."
I get a GIF, yeah,
I
like
get it.
like
Yeah.
or a GIF or a GIF or a GIF or a goof or a moof or whatever. I don't know, like it's just like
His new
it's this
technology.
new unbelievable technology, and I'm just like, yeah, man. Or it's like, man,
Yeah.
we're gonna go. I think that it's time for the church to get on the World Wide Web. We're gonna be surfing the net to salvations. You're just like, you're just, for those that can't see, I literally was just surfing the net in my chair. Also, I don't know if that's how you surf. That was like more bad
I
dance
think
moves.
every church should change their mission statement right now to surfing the net for
That's
salvations.
what we're doing. That's what COVID-19 has done. It's like we've gone from physical spaces to surfing the net for salvations, and you have to say it like that. That's what it is. There's, oh, dude. There's some. it's been cool to see some churches like really like move really quickly. But part of some of what
Yeah.
if you dive deep into some church websites, like some that were like probably maybe haven't even updated in years and years, it's like some of the things you find are incredible. Like like church, there's a couple churches that haven't updated, and they're doing it now, but like that hadn't,
Yeah.
and it's like, wow, some of the stuff that you look at. I'm not even talking just in our district, I'm talking like across the board. You start looking for like church websites, what are other people doing? There is
Yeah.
some church websites that it's like, I swear they haven't been updated since like 2001. They're like those angel fire ones, or like GeoCities, where like the stuff is falling down and it's like
Oh yeah.
flashing fire flaming font. It's like come to church, and there's like little like penguins dancing at the bottom. It's like, this is real stuff. This is
I can't say I've seen that.
Dude, I took a class in grade 8 on how to make these GeoCity websites. And my teacher, I remember my teacher, she was like 28 or something like that at that point,
Yeah.
refused to teach it, had to get another person to come in because she was so scared we were going to be kidnapped by predators on the internet by making GeoCities website. This is like 2005, right? So like,
Yeah.
this is when nobody wanted to give their credit card information. It was a wild time. Like, no one wanted to give any information online. Now it's like, yeah, you want to know where I am all the time? Yeah, okay, whatever. As long as I get this sweet app where I can see pictures
Yeah.
of my friends. Like,
Oh yeah.
or like even this COVID-19 thing, like I send exactly where I've been all day so that I can find, so the government can know that I've been sitting in my house scared for the last 24 hours.
You're just outside, like crying outside of a restaurant that's not open.
I've been, yeah, except for it's open, but I just want to sit inside. That's the problem. It's like the Subway's hours used to be open till 7, and now it's open till 5. That's actually really ruined my life a couple of times, where I like try to get a restaurant. You know how mad I get when something's not open regular hours? It's like 7 o'clock. I'm like, I'd like some food. They're like, we close at 6. It's like, you're a supper restaurant. I was gonna walk there. Like, anyways, we're ranting now.
I don't know how we got here.
I don't know. That's kind of the story of our time here, but that actually segues okay, because I think that like what we wanted to talk about was like creativity, and it was one thing that often we say, not to toot your own horn, but straight up, we did some stuff really well.
Yeah.
We had at one point like 200 youth coming on a Friday night, which was actually like, some people are like, oh, that's so great. How did you do that? Like, man, I almost died.
Yeah.
like I probably, if we props to we should also mention your dad was my boss, is the lead pastor. So like, props to Marlo Jenkins, lead pastor there, because like, honestly, and I've heard this from other youth pastors over the years, there's times where like some of the stuff we had going on, a lesser lead pastor might have like threatened firing, without a full understanding. And I say that as like, I don't actually believe it was justified. It would have been justified, but I've heard of stories of churches like backlashing against youth pastors because we had all these community kids coming and engaging in hearing the gospel for the first time in Christian community, and then eventually some really good stories. But it wasn't like do you remember, we never had like, and maybe when you went to the Facebook page for Beaumont, the town we were in, like there's the odd time where you'd get like these rumors going around, but it was never like what people thought. And I don't know if they ever actually thought it, where they're like kids were just like, shooting up heroin in the corner of the church gym or on the stage, or like selling meth and like stabbing each other. You know what I mean? It wasn't Skid Row or like there's two gangs. Like, I always pictured in parents' minds, have you ever seen the West Side Story? The old like skit where,
no, I haven't seen it, but like
there's a scene where like, I think it's the Sharks and the Jets. I don't know how I'm remembering this. I watched it in high school, but like it's like these like 50s or 60s greasers gangs, and when they fight, they like snap they snap towards each other for a rumble. That's what I pictured our parents were seeing happening.
Yeah.
It's like kids trying to kill each other,
but like they're singing and dancing at the same time.
Yeah, it was like a Broadway musical.
That's what we are known for around the town.
You know how they say that you're for a Broadway musical gang fight church,
where like it's really serious. Like, people are getting hurt, but it's also very well done production.
Yeah, like it
But
was
the choreography is amazing.
kids were getting addicted to drugs. There was deaths, but man, was it art. Anyways, I don't, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. But all that to say, like people were actually like there was some misunderstandings. We'd have 200 kids coming out, and like okay, so let's go through a couple of the things that happened that were bad. Like um, there's one pretty bad one where like we actually had a kid. We're playing a glow in the dark game. And this isn't funny, but it's like
Yeah,
it's legendary like story, and everyone's okay. But like we had one leader, and I choose to believe the kid, but he like in the dark, it was like a Nerf gun glow in the dark all through the church. And with any other youth group, like I grew up at Hope City, and we would have done stuff like that all the time. And like one kid grabbed a girl's like chest, and like I don't think it was like a predatory move, but we don't know. And that was like one of the worst nights of my life. Like she was quite upset. Like in the midst of this game in the dark in the basement. So we banned games in the dark throughout the church after that. Didn't like make a but the police were involved. Like I'm thinking what else were some other like really big ones? Oh yeah, we had that drunk dad show up. That was
that was like the youth were fine. It was the dad that like threatened a kid and was almost gonna fight like a 13-year-old.
Well, and I didn't. Well, he got like grabbed a kid. I wasn't there until after, but I ended up going nose to nose with this like probably 250-pound drunk dad. Now I was 313 pounds at the time, but it would have been a good tussle. I was ready to go. I didn't know he had attacked a kid until after he drove away. But I was like, I was pretty intense. But the story behind that for anybody that's listening is like some kids had a beef with another kid. That's what happened a lot. We really didn't have that much bad stuff happening. It was that these kids had little beefs in this suburban middle upper class town, and they'd bring them to our youth group, and then we'd be like, oh great, like now they're good. You know that old like I'll meet you at the bike rack thing. Well, it was we'll meet you at 180. That was the thing. So they went and some girl got mad at some boys and went home and told their drunk dad who was drinking. That's how you get drunk, you drink. He had been drinking, and he came to the church. Look, they told him that some kid had threatened them with a knife. And actually, the altercation, there was no knife involved. We found out because we ended up having an amazing. This is actually a cool thing. An amazing relationship with the police. Like on my last day, we went to the local Vietnamese restaurant, and we announced my goodbye on our church's Instagram, and like the cops came to say goodbye to me. Like that's how close of a relationship we had. Partially because I actually reached out and went to their place and said, hey, come hang out in plain clothes or in your cop clothes, have good relationships, come by every Friday. We had like one guy, Paul, he's such a good cop. And now my wife works for the RCMP, so she knows all of them by name. But Paul would come and like hang out and just talk about music with us at the sound desk for like an hour, or he'd go and play basketball with the kids with his like bulletproof vest and come back just absolutely like gassed and sweaty. But it was great because the kids loved him and the police loved what we were doing. Wait, what were we talking about again? Which story?
Well, we were talking about bad things.
Which
so
story?
You were talking about drunk dad.
Drunk dad was that was bad. He came up and he got arrested down the road is what happened. But I felt like there was another place I was going with that. There's so many stories. That was my concern with this podcast, is that there's so many things and we're just going to get riled up. But
other bad things, that was like the main thing. And then we had like one time a kid smoked weed in the bathroom.
But that was
5 years with the amount of kids we had and community kids. That was a pretty good record.
Well, the thing is, the one time we had someone smoke weed in the bathroom, that was when I got the most parent kickback. Like, and it wasn't even church families. I was getting phone calls. Did you know that there was marijuana in your church? There was marijuana. And I was like, yeah, probably. I bet it's there. My response, I actually got really good at giving like political responses, but my go-to response to parents would be, of course, unless like there was violence or something like that, or there was something really bad. Like obviously you try to go into pastor mode or be diplomatic, but I'd be like, the opening line was, I'm not dumb enough to believe that there's no marijuana or any like kids that ever show up drunk. We caught a couple kids drunk and we'd make them go home. We'd explain why, but I'd always say like, hey, we love you and we want you back next week, but that's unacceptable behavior. You're not safe. Like there's a safety issue
Yeah.
here. If you need us to get you help to get home, we will. But hey, just know we love you and we want you back next week. But you can't come. You have to come sober. And what I remember, this one girl I'm thinking of that ended up coming to small groups a year later every week
Mm-hmm.
and sitting in conversation about, because we didn't overreact. I know some parents wanted me to be like, you smoked marijuana, well, we're going to call the FBI, even though they have no jurisdiction in this country. We're gonna like, I don't know, like, call your principal. Like they wanted me to like, parade them through town with a sign that says I smoked weed at church. Like, what am I supposed, or kick them out forever? And that doesn't achieve the gospel, right? Like that doesn't get kids closer to Jesus. That just keeps our little holy huddle a little bit, not even safer. It was like, it's not even that safe. Like, sure, they smoked a little bit of weed. That's not allowed. We had a rule. We made the rules and we said them every week, right? Um, but it was just, we wanted non-church kids to come on a Friday, but then
Yeah.
we ended up having a lot of chaos. The one last thing we should talk about is bike seat kid.
I don't, was I there for that one? Or that
I
was
I,
that
I
the
think you
year?
were. We had a kid
I
that
might have been.
we had a
I
kid.
wasn't involved in dealing with it though, if I was there, or it was during my internship and I was covering.
Right.
Okay.
So this kid was like, it was like this time of year, May or June, and this kid comes up to me crying, and and then this other kid's beside him, covered, like not covered but bleeding, and like the one kid's like, this kid beat me up with a bike seat. Like, so he had taken the bike seat off his BMX bike because I guess he didn't want the seat to be stolen, because there's a great black market for on the streets for bike seats. And this kid like got into a fight and he beat the kid with his bike seat. And
Yeah.
like, so then anyways, me and we had another leader who was he's a cop off duty, but he would come in. So we were talking to the kid, and this kid that hit the other kid with a bike seat was like, hey man, no, he wasn't like, hey man, he was like quite shook up, but he's like freaking out. He's like, they're gonna ruin my bike, they're gonna destroy my bike, they're whatever. And I'm like, I'm not really feeling too sympathetic for him, because he just like pummeled this kid with a weapon, a weird weapon,
Yeah.
but a weapon nonetheless. And he did some good damage. Turns out a bike seat is like a pretty solid tool for hurting people. um, but he's like, they're gonna destroy my bike. I'm like, I guarantee they're not destroying your bike, whatever, blah blah blah. We get out, we deal with him. I forget what happened with him. And then we get outside, and the same kids, the friends of the kid that got jumped with a bike seat, picked up his bike and threw it in a pond, which was like, ah, crap. But like, we dealt with that stuff all the time. And actually, we ended up creating this culture where they started to respect us, because they knew that if they fought or brought their beef to our youth group, they were going to get, and like, we were going to get in trouble. I started telling them that at the start of the night. I'd say, this is a church. If you're offended by coming to a building with a cross on it and hearing about Jesus, you're the dumb one, not me. And like, literally, right? We said
Yeah.
those words, like, I'm not the
Yeah.
dumb one. We're not hiding anything here. So you're going to hear about Jesus, but if you're gay, straight, whatever, anything under the sun, you're welcome here. But we're always going to tell you the truth about what we believe. So they started to respect us. I was just very honest with them. I said, if you're going to vape, don't vape out front. I don't really know about, but like, they're going to vape, right? Don't do it in the building. I don't want it right at the front doors, because then parents see and then the younger kids see, and they respected us, right? Like, if we were very straight with them. So I remember we had two kids that scheduled a fight just off property. Like, left the legal property, went to the neighbor's front lawn, fought, and came back. And the guy told
Yeah.
me,
Just
kid's almost in tears. He's like, don't worry, we didn't. It was like, he got a bloody nose. He's like, we didn't do it at the church because like we both said we don't want a 180 to get in trouble. But all these stories, like, these are bad stories, and if anyone's listening, they're probably like, oh wow, it sounds like you ran like a children's fight club or something, right? Like something like that, like some underground fight ring. um but no, like, this was church, and like, these kids would have never come to, and maybe in my experience wouldn't have survived in a youth group. um and they loved the culture, they loved the community, right? That's really what
yeah.
drove it, was creating a space. But when I showed up when I was in 2014, my first year, I think you were probably there for the first conversation. I just said, like, what do we want this to look like? The you guys all kind of graduated. You guys had like probably 20 grade 12s.
There was a huge graduating class of just like, of a
And then when
bunch of
I
us graduating from youth.
so we had all these leaders, but then when we started going, I think we had like 50 or 60 kids show up that first couple of weeks in the fall, but none of
Yeah.
them were prior students. None of them were from our church. And maybe it's 40 kids or something like that, but it wasn't like these were all like feeding out of our children's program, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like we just kind of sat down, and if I remember right, you wish you would write things down at this point, but we really had no clue what we were doing. You were just first years into Bible college. I was some lunatic who they gave the keys to a car that was bigger than he could handle, and I was like, all right, like let's see what we can do with this. But one thing that I did always strategically think was I didn't want to be like other youth groups, because I still think this to this day, and I hope this is kind of the heart that comes out for people that, or the lesson that comes out for anybody listening to this, is like, I can't think, I think in youth ministry and in church in general, we spend a lot of time trying to emulate other churches or other worship teams or other experiences. And unfortunately, and this people have often accused me of being cynical. Well, you don't have to accuse me. You're probably right. But like, I look, and it's not even a pessimistic attitude. It's just I try to have a critical eye of how we can always be better, right? I love what we do, but I love it so much I want it to be better. And it wasn't a negative perspective of that everyone else was terrible, but nobody was actually nobody was winning to the point that we should have that be what we were aiming for. The best youth group in Edmonton at the time, I can't even tell you who it was, or in Alberta, but they probably had 100 kids, 120 kids, maybe 1/3. You know what I mean? It wasn't, no one had 200 kids, and no one was really discipling or making, like, they're all doing great stuff, but nobody was like doing the point where like, yep, that's the best we could ever do. And so I was like, why is it that every youth pastor gets in? And so we try to emulate that big church. So it might be in Alberta, it might be like Hope City or North Point or First Assembly in Calgary, or there's other ones too. I'm just naming a few to begin with. Hopefully there's nobody listening like, you didn't say my church and I'm bigger than there or whatever. No, like I mean, like, we were a smaller church, and generally the tendency, we're a church of 150, maybe 200 on a Sunday, and like we're like, okay, like we want to be, the tendency is that we should try and copy what other youth groups are doing to be as big as them. But I was like, I want to reach kids no one else is reaching. I want to do something different, so we can't look like them. And not that we never tried, because you remember the first couple of weeks we tried to do like round table discussion nights with these kids. It was horrible. It didn't work at all.
Yeah.
You would have been at those tables.
Oh, man,
like
I barely remember that, actually.
that was like 6 years ago. All I remember,
it was long ago.
we had candles. It was like Alpha, right? Because this is coming out of 2013 Alpha initiative. Like, we'll have questions. It'll be cutting edge questions and cookies, and they'll like. And I love Alpha. We utilized Alpha, and Alpha was one of the best things for bringing these kids down the road into relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
But that whole model, like, we had candles and cookies, and they literally started the tablecloths on fire. Like, it makes it sound like we were literally like trying to evangelize chimpanzees. They were still people, but like they were bad. Like, you think they were just brats, right? Like, and then we still had these church kids, like maybe 15. There's maybe 15 kids in our youth group, maybe 20, if they all showed up. But they all were at hockey. They all were at whatever. So we never had them, which kind of sucked. But do you remember what our Fridays looked like at the beginning? We really tried to be all things to all people.
Yeah. Man, it all kind of blends together. But yeah.
It's like
we only had
worship.
about 50 kids. So we tried to do like a church service thing, because that's kind of what
Everyone does.
we did. Yeah, everyone does, and what we did for the past like whatever 4 or 5 years.
We would do hangout worship. We had the fluorescent lights on in the gym.
Yeah, and
Our stage had
was like
ceramic pumpkins
and those big drapes in the back.
Very 2002.
Were there for way too long.
The ceramic pumpkins were the worst.
Yeah, I feel like it was just trying to be like a normal youth group, right? Because you think that's what you should do.
Yeah, we're just like, And it's not, that's the thing. I keep telling people, it's not like I came in with this massive vision. Like I had this kind of general idea. I want to be different. I want to reach people in a different way, whatever. But it wasn't like I had like written out my like 7 key leadership key, you know, measurables or anything like that.
Measurables.
Yeah, like KPIs, key performance indicators, or anything like that. Like I didn't have any clue about any of that stuff. I was just a Bible college grad who was like, I want to reach people. I want to have unchurched kids come. And I want to disciple people, which is a good attitude. But like to
Yeah.
start off, man, it was just small. We tried to do worship, preaching, fun, small groups. We tried to be all things to all people, right? And I think
Yeah.
we just kind of spread ourselves a little too thin. And then like I would say that really it was creativity, and like I'm talking meme creativity. That was really when it started for us. It like was my first real good leadership decision I made was just creating the culture of saying make a memory, because that's really the thing that started the ramp up of what we did. Was every
Yeah.
week, I'd say this in our meetings, I think before every single um, youth night when we'd kind of get together and pray and do our pregame meetings, and I was like, tonight we make a memory that a kid is going to remember until they're 45 years old. I don't care how stupid it is. I hope it's Jesus centric. I hope it's surrounded around an experience with Christ. But if not, if it's playing dodgeball and putting a bucket on your head and and running around on a in a wheelchair with a bucket on your head and saying 50 points if you hit me, like something dumb, right? Like that's what kids, and we caught that from memes, because memes are dumb and kids share them and love them and think they're funny. And that was really the start of like where we started doing some of these like stupid events, and even just naming things stupid. Like remember we started asking kids what they wanted to do, and they wanted to play this dumb game called kick the can. I'd never played kick the can, but you guys had done it before I was there. I think it was
Yeah.
I didn't even fully understand the game, but it was like you put a can in the middle of the gym, and whatever team can kick it first is the winner. I was like, what type of small town garbage is this? It's
I
like
think everyone knows kick the can except for
I've
you.
never
It's
played
like,
kick the can.
yeah.
Just like when they first told me, I just pictured like some old farmer kid, not old farmer kids, but no, like farmer kids. Oh,
Like an 8-year-old child, if you
yeah,
could picture
like,
that.
like a large old man baby, but like this like farmer, like small town, stereotypical guy in like work boots and coveralls, like just kicking a can around the gym and laughing and having the time of his life. Like what's kick the can? This isn't something that even sounds like remotely fun. So I took it and I was like, okay, we're gonna change it and use glow sticks, and you have to get to the middle of the gym. But instead of calling it like some real big like kick the can, we named it something stupid. We called it glowy run. And the kids thought that was so dumb, but they thought it was funny, so they wanted to
Yeah.
do it, right? um and then like we kind of took that attitude, and then do you remember remember when some of the girls, some of our church kids wanted what do you call it? They wanted to have a Christmas banquet, and I didn't want to do that because I knew that none of our kids would come. It'd be like appeasing
Yeah.
like a group of like 10 girls from our church. And I'm not willing to like take a night there we could connect with 150 or 200 unchurched kids or reach more of them, that just so we can have something that we always had. So we did, so to appease them, I think you were part of this discussion, but we were like, okay, we'll do it, but we'll call it the fancy eat.
Yeah. We're like glowy run worked well.
So it's
What
the
else can we do?
fancy eat. And we named it and we branded it, and then we made a
Yeah.
contest for who could dress the best dressed won a prize, and the worst dressed. and then and then all we and then we hyped up that we were going to watch the greatest Christmas movie of all time, Jingle All the Way, with Arnold
So
Schwarzenegger
bad.
and Sinbad. But the best part was the kids hated it, but then they wouldn't watch it. But then right at the end, while we were mopping up and they were leaving, it got to the part where like he dresses up as Turbo Man and is like fighting, and they're all standing. There's like 70 kids standing, not leaving, watching this like best scene. They're like, it's Turbo time. And they're all like, they wouldn't move. And then yeah, that so it was that really was part of what we kind of, and then we just kind of were like, this works, right? Like meme culture works.
Not taking yourself seriously really works.
And not taking
Yeah.
yourself seriously, like I think that's a mistake some youth groups make, is they think that they need to be like a mega church or like some sort of like incredible that if they don't if they don't take themselves seriously, they're never going to be taken seriously by their peers or by people that I think can, go to the next step or the next rung in the ladder. As much as I hate to say that, like
Yeah.
I'll pigeonhole myself as, because we all, maybe from your time, but I know we've seen examples of like the zany youth pastor who he pizza parties and whatever, and like just like that's what
Is
they
it goofy?
well, I can't,
No.
just for people listening, Brennan and me were driving a couple of years ago, and I like started doing something like that, and I can do a really good goofy impression, but I did it without knowing. He's like, "That's an incredible goofy," but I can't do it if he tells me to do it because I get nervous, and it just comes out like, "I'm goofy." That's not goofy at all. But like, anyways, like the zany like
That's so dumb.
90s youth pastor who never really developed as a leader and never developed as a strategic thinker, and they're 40 years old and they're like, all right kids, let's listen to Breakfast in Hell by the Newsboys, Toby Mac, or like or like or TFK, rock fist, that's gonna bring him in from the high schools, like, and I'm not trying to make fun of that too much, but like, but that was something that I think people fear. They like, if I'm too crazy, if I don't do crazy, like if I act zany, I'm going to become that guy who can never get a job outside of youth ministry. But the thing that we always did was we were always able to like clearly show that we were aware of how stupid that was, and then always bring it back. And I think that's a lesson for preaching as well. Because I've seen guys that are like really funny and they're like, oh yeah, funny youth pastor preaching. I have the kids roaring, laughing, telling crazy stories. But if you can't kind of bring it back at the point to be like, okay, but seriously, Jesus loves you. And here's the facts of how your life could be changed. And a lot of that, I've learned to be good at that. You have to be able, it's tonal, it's you have to learn how to do it. But we kind of did that with everything we did. Like we tried to turn our youth group into this giant meme and use memes. We would take memes on Instagram, like scour the internet. I still do for memes, and take them, screenshot them, repurpose them to be about our youth group or about one of our leaders, like Trevi. Do we want to get into Trevi? Trevi's a great example.
Oh man.
Trevi is a guy that was he's the same age as Brennan or maybe a year older, and like just kind of was a little socially different. I guess that's how we could put it. Like, and maybe didn't pick up on all social cues, and just like a little bit of an outcast at the time of this. Not that he would not been the top candidate to be an all-star youth leader. That's probably the best way to put it. Like, I had somebody tell me when I started, "What are you going to do with him?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like, I honestly don't know. And I was going for coffee with him. I didn't really know the kid at all, and it was this awkward conversation. But I promised, every youth leader I'd give them an hour. And I said, and God said, "Jeff, you are going to have an hour with Trevi." And I was like, "God, this is very hard. I need your, if you made the sun stand still, I need you to make it go quicker for this coffee. I need time to move faster." And I remember saying to God in that coffee, I said, "God, what should I do with this leader?" And he said, "Make him a hero." I remember that was like literally what he said. So I just like, "Hey, Trevi, would you be down to like be the, when we do like a messy icebreaker game, to like be the guy that does that against kids?" You know what I mean? Like challenge the kids, and like every week I'm like, it's the Trevi challenge. We'll do that. And he's like, "Yeah, sure, okay." So we started, like, it kind of developed over time. Like, he would come out and challenge them to a simple messy game, and then we started playing music when he'd come in screaming and like hulked up and ready to go. And I love wrestling, so then we started going to Value Village and buying costumes and making wrestling characters and having like introduction like videos. And he'd be like, first one was like, there's this song from this old wrestler, and it was like, "He's a man, such a man, he's a real man's man." They had like a video of him in like a construction outfit coming out with, like, in the back there's like bears fighting, and he looks back and laughs at the bears. And like, it was so stupid. But every week we did this, and it caught fire. Like, kids were messaging me, "Can I be in the Trevi challenge? I need to be in it this week. I want to challenge Trevi." And they were winning like candy to begin with. And then we started like animating shots of these different characters. Like, we had Trevi Vice was one of them, and that was like, it was just like a Miami Vice Trevi, but we animated it. Actually, hang on.
Do you have it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the Trevi Vice one is like, one of the best design. I don't know. It's just so 80s. It's so good. But the the Trevi Challenge stuff was sort of the start of like our kind of growing in like, okay, what's actually gonna work to like draw on these kids. There it is. If you're watching this on the video, you can see it. Sorry about
Yeah,
audio listeners, but it's the
yeah.
best like Trevi design probably ever.
It's up there.
Um,
Policeman
yeah,
Trevi was pretty great too.
yeah, true. The, stop. Okay. Yeah, because we started like in the basement of the church because it was like a smaller group. So in the gym it just feels sort of empty with like a few, with not that many kids sitting down. So we started in the basement, and then Jeff recently found the first video and he sent it to me, and it was wild to watch it again. Of Trebi just like eating some gross food with a kid, and they're just like on a little stage in the basement, but we went with it because it worked, and it just grew from there.
And all it was who could eat 6 donuts from Tim Hortons the fastest.
Yeah.
And there's this picture of Trebi like dying, like getting ill, and this other kid, Ivor, who was a grade 7, who got so sick he almost didn't come back to youth. But Ivor ended up loving the Trebi Challenge so much and becoming a huge part of our like youth group. He's actually going to Bible college now.
All
Like
because of Trebi
I like obviously it
and
wasn't.
and God.
Yeah, God played a key role in that as well, and mentorship. But like, if you don't catch them and get them to want to have fun and be there, you don't get the multiple layers of opportunity to invest and disciple them. Like I really believe that the Trebi Challenge, which how much it helped Ivor and a couple other kids, like if it wasn't for the Trebi Challenge, we don't have 200 kids coming. There's not a chance, like
Yeah.
100%. And then we branded Trebi. But here's the coolest part. We kind of talked about like, so Trebi became this phenomenon around Beaumont. Like, and I'm not just saying that. Like, we actually this is a story for another time. But we ran
Too many stories.
we ran a fake mayoral campaign during the election last time, like 4 years ago, and put up like we animated a picture of Trebi, and stole Obama's Hope campaign, like the two-toned picture, and put Nope, and it's a meme, right? And we started putting the signs up around Beaumont, and like started a Trebi for Mayor page, and it was not just for us to be fun. Like it was, we had a heck of a lot of fun with it, and it was so stupid. And we like, really, it shows how much our youth group had influence over our community. Like the community knew what was going on, and so kids were like, and we had kids take pictures with the Nope signs, and like people on our Beaumont official Facebook page were like, who are you voting for? And random people were saying Trebi, and we made like Nope t-shirts, and people, I think actually someone came and got one or two, like people, it became this weird movement, but people were seeing this thing and then connecting it back to the church. And they're like, man, this church does some great things for the youth, to the point where actually we had some random person right in the peak of all this stuff come in to the church office and say, I want to give like unchurched, unchristian, I want to give $5,000 to your youth group. I don't know if I ever told you that story. And
Yeah, I
like,
remember that.
it was just like, what you do for this community and what you do for our kids is like unbelievable. I feel like I need to give back because, man, you guys are killing it. We see like the stuff that's going on. I had teachers when I was at the school, like, what's the Trebi Challenge? Because they all knew Trebi, and he was so quiet and didn't, kind of reserved. And he's like, I see his face on shirts. Like there was 3 kids in one class wearing a shirt and a hoodie, like a Trebi hoodie. And they're like, the teachers are like, I know that kid. I know who that is.
That'd be such a wild
Like a
experience.
mind
Like
blur.
I knew Trevi in high school, of course. So it's
Like
like to picture like knowing that guy, then years later, see.
he's a fashion icon in this
Oh
small
my
municipal.
gosh, that's so funny.
So I guess to not just to ramblers, we could tell
Yeah.
stories like this forever, but like it catapulted us, and it had us catch an idea that we needed to be able to try different things, like doing a church service, hangout time, service, snacks, go home, basketball, go home, just as is. Wasn't It doesn't matter how good your worship leader is. It didn't matter how good your speaking was. Like I'm a pretty good youth speaker. Like I'm a funny guy. I've always been able to do it. they didn't hate they didn't hate my speaking any more than anyone else. You could have gotten, I don't even know who a good youth speaker was at the time, who back then, like we'll just say now, you could have got Carl Lentz or Stephen Furtick in there, and they probably would have like ripped him apart tooth and like you had to meet their energy with
Yeah.
aggression. Like I always said I had to lightly bully them towards Jesus, because if you didn't show a certain dominance on the stage, like this, people are going to listen to this, be like, Jeff, you're being ridiculous, but you know it's true. Like we had guest
Yeah.
speakers come in, and one guy who is in our district, and he'd be okay with us telling this story. He went in to speak and had no clue as a guest speaker, and he's like, "Oh, let's do question time." And he's like, "Just ask me questions about myself." And I just heard kind of not in the mic the kids say something. I'm like, "Oh no, this isn't going well." He's like, "Am I a what? Am I a fat lesbian?" And I'm like, I'm sitting in the back. I'm like, and he was done. Like he was just like, he
Yeah,
was.
like at that point, the kids like
The
have
kids are
lost it,
gone,
and you
right? Like
can't take them. You can't get them back.
no, they're gone. So
Yep.
so I had to constantly be be the dominating force on a stage of fighting for my life. That same speaker, and he was a capable speaker. It wasn't like we got
Yeah.
some like first year Bible college student like that would have people would have quit ministry if that was your first year experience, was just to preach. And he came up
Yeah.
to me, he's like, "Is it like this every week?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, that was actually not that bad considering what I had to deal with sometimes." Um, but with these kids that were really bad, and like we just built rapport with them, but it was the creativity of what we did, and we just ran with that. So most of what we did, church every week, we never did fun night really, right? Like there was
Yeah.
one or two times, and I think most of them went horribly, like the police got called or something. So we did church every night. We actually tried worship for a long time, and that wasn't very good. It
Yeah.
didn't, they
Well,
didn't
like,
do it.
like like we tried sticking to like church services because that's in so many of our minds it's like, okay, that's how you get people to know Jesus, and to, if they're in church, then do church stuff. But like, how do you get a group of, and like, I'm a worship leader, I love worship. How do you get a group of mainly community kids to sing songs that aren't that cool, because they're like about God, when they don't believe in God, they don't care, like it's just, and it's like a weird experience because no one, that's not a normal thing in culture except for concerts. But there
Nobody
it's
does
like
it.
very, very well done music, and it's music that they like. They're not like forced to sit and sing along or stand and sing along for stuff like, right? So yeah, it's just like, if you're trying to force something, and if you take a step back and think like, okay, here's the culture I'm trying to reach, here's what I'm doing, is this at all going to work? And I, like, not that God wasn't moving through it, not that he couldn't have, like, if it was working, we would have kept doing it, if God was really doing something through that. Like, we had a couple kids like, when does worship start,
Yeah,
because
we
it
we
makes us
miss
feel stuff.
we miss
Yeah.
the worships because it makes us feel stuff. And that was literally after they were telling us about like some of their really inappropriate, immoral behaviors. I won't get into
Yeah.
it, but like we found them out by the parking lot, and they were telling us some stories about some really shady stuff they did. But we
Yeah.
didn't do worship that week for some reason. Like we missed the worships.
Yeah.
It makes us feel something happy. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, so then now people are gonna be like, well, then why did you get rid of it? Well, the majority weren't engaging in it. It was actually a
Yeah.
detriment to the vision of what we were doing on that Friday, because we were doing
Hmm.
worship, speaking, games, small
Small
groups.
group.
And then it
Yeah.
became crazy, right? Like we were probably at that point, we were sitting around the first year 90, we're like, wow, 90 kids. And then the second year is like we'd pop up to like 100, 120, and then it just took off when we really dove into like memes and Instagram and promotion, and being really creative. We were getting like 175 for the service, over 200 through the night. um, Kids we had kids, unchurched kids, asking to come to church on Sunday, which is a whole other story, because at that time we were not really set up. Like I remember one time we had 3 community kids that I wouldn't even have expected them to come to youth group, come on a Sunday, and we're talking about money, like giving finances
Yeah.
for a building expansion. I was like, oh no, why did this? And whatever, it is what it is.
Mhm.
But like we hit a point where we had grade 8 small group for grade 8 small, like grade 8 girls with 44 kids in it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It was, well,
we were a small building, and like we're like but then like yeah, maybe let's wait, we'll talk about like how we kind of transferred after, but I do want to talk about
okay.
the creative side a little more. Like we did some stuff that was, nothing was too much work to make a memory. because that's what would drive people, because kids
Yeah.
want to be a part of something. They want to be a part of something that's just crazy. Like, we started this thing when I was at Hope City before, when it was Mill Woods, called Santa Cures, and it started up with me just dressing up like Santa and giving out really bad gifts, like wrapping up like the worst gifts you could find at Value Village. And then I took it over to Eaglemont. And first year was kind of like, oh, whatever. I didn't even dress up as Santa. I just wore a camo jacket and like a Santa hat. And I was like, I don't know if it's going to go well, but the kids liked it. So then we started like every year trying to one up ourselves. So the next year we built a giant Christmas present out of plywood with a fake wall. And we like loaded up a motorbike from downtown, had to like boost it and start it in the gym, had it hidden in the present, and had this like after a church service, like we preached the gospel that night, but we promoted Santa Cures is here. Like we had a countdown. He was doing promos like this character of like Santa Cures. And Santa Cures doesn't mean anything. Cures is my last name. That doesn't have any like weight. It's just Santa and my last name. And anyways, we had this like countdown to Carol of the Bells by August Burns Red. So like this metal, and it count, and at 30 and at 3, 2, 1, like the music dropped, and it's like this metal like Carol of the Bells, and all the room, the light on the. We had a laser and a smoke machine in the present with with the false wrapping paper wall, and like we're like suffocating in there, and all of a sudden I'm wearing a full Santa suit. Kelly, one of our global workers for Alberta, has like reindeer hat on and drives out of this Christmas present, and we rip around on this. I'm like, ho ho ho! I have this bag. I'm swinging the bag on the bike above my head. Get up on stage, start, and like it's like Oprah's favorite things, like get up here at the front. I'm just throwing like I had like what was it, like a toothbrush case, a half-drank bottle of Diet Dr. Pepper, just like some of the stupidest stuff that you could ever see. Like it was dumb, and they thought it was funny. So the next year we did we had Trebby. I actually had an actual cop going to bring a cop car, but fell through at the last minute. But we did like a Hannibal Lecter, like wrapped me in chains, like I was this like bad Santa, and we bought a police light and put it on Trebby's roof of his car and drove into the gym and got him a full policeman outfit. So he opened the back door, and like I was like trying to get away from him and like screaming, and like had my sack of toys, but he like brought me up and unchained me on stage throwing presents out to the kids. And then the last one was the greatest, because it had been a decade of Santa Cures between two churches, and we started promoting that I was dead. And the best part is how did this came up. I think it was you and me and another friend of ours, Brendan. We're just sitting there in a month before. We're like, what can we do for Santa Cures? So it was like, what if he was dead? I was like, I think he might be dead. It might be the last year. Like, well, what if he rose from the dead? Or it was a fake death. So we actually we had one of our leaders build a fake coffin, but it was like a giant box with a lid. Like it was huge. It was
with some wheels on it.
With wheels on it. It wasn't a coffin. You could fit like 15 people in it. But we draped it with like black like dollar store cloth, and then shot a video. I remember you, me, and Trebby try, because the kids love Trebby. Everything had to be Trebby, with a yellow snow shovel going through a cemetery, not actually touching a grave, but like emulating that he had like started digging up a grave, and had this like music in the background and lightning. And then all of a sudden there's a spotlight at the back, and Trebby's pushing with his hood up this like giant box. Lights go out, lightning hits, and then Bring Me to Life by Evanescence hits. and there's a spotlight on me, and I come out, and Santa's alive. But the best part about that was funny. The start of the video was, we had said for years, like, Santa Cures is dead. We're going to have a memorial. So we had this, played Sarah McLachlan, I Will Remember You, with these like Ken Burns pictures across the back. And then all of a sudden, bong, like this like music hits, and it's the graveyard. And like we never really thought through that, like some kids, we always had new kids there. So one kid came up to me after.
It's something we do once a year. So any grade 7 would have no idea, unless they were previously told about Santa Cures, what this is.
Or anybody who brought a friend. There was like a grade 10 girl that was like, I was here for the first time. I thought this was someone had actually died. And this like this was the greatest
Someone
production.
that we called Santa Gears.
Like, you know how there's some people named like Santa, like maybe they thought it was like
Yeah.
Santa Cures, he passed away
Oh,
and he got hit by a car or something. No, like Santa, the best.
wonder what countries he's from.
Yeah, like and so and then it was, and we had like fire like cauldrons. So that
Yeah.
if you didn't see it, this is like the mental picture they're gonna have is crazy, but it was incredible, and kids still talk about it. Like it was so funny and it was so well done.
I
And
still show people that video.
oh, I do too. Like it's incredible. And it just came out of like a bunch of us just spitballing stupid ideas. And like I think in most, and this is probably what I hope people take away from that part of the story, is that like it if you don't take yourself too seriously, and if you're willing to like let your mind creatively get outside of what you've normally done and what you've seen done before, you might actually be able to reach people you were unable to reach before. and
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean you're not a pastor. We're not entertainers, we're pastors first. But there's, especially with youth ministry, you need to be strategic. I'm sorry, some of the resources I find, some of them, they're all pretty good, but like if we all just copied all the resource websites from the States or even from our ABNWT page, like if you just copy everything that is kind of like the status quo, like a lot of resources are there to get you to like a baseline. Really,
Yeah.
that's the best way to put it, to get you to the baseline. I don't think I'm not saying don't try to be like, I'm going to pick on my home church, but like Hope City, they're doing good stuff. There's lots of other great churches. Emulate, steal ideas. We need to steal, but like, what are you doing that no one else is doing? And we were never scared to fail because no one knew what we were doing. Even my
Yeah.
boss, Marlo, had no clue what was going on. The report was just, hey, there's a kids coming to Jesus, and kids are getting engaged, and not like for marriage, but they're getting engaged into our youth group. And he was like, great, keep doing what you're doing. Just, make sure you're preaching the Bible. And we did that.
Mhm.
But then we kind of like, we really did get a little bit discontent, right? Like it got a little bit hard because lots of kids were coming, but we weren't seeing kids like accepting Jesus.
Yeah, like because we had like 3 years of you getting there, doing church services, and we did grow in like how entertaining and fun like the Trebby Challenge was and everything. But then we still had so many kids showing up, and small groups were so hard to handle, and it just didn't seem like any kids were getting like closer to Jesus through it. So yeah, after the third year, right?
It was after the
We
second
changed it.
year, because we had like well over 150 kids after year two, but then
Was it the second? Okay.
in third year we made the change. We had that meeting halfway through third year where we're like, hey, or
Yeah.
maybe it's halfway through second year to start in third year, where we were like, man, we need to reassess our strategy here, and how do we get them from like unchristian or passive Christian to like across to the what I call the other side of the river, right? Like how do we get them across? Because this one stepping stone across that is Friday night, it's trying to be too many things. It's so thin that no
Yeah.
one wants to go and take that journey. They're just coming and engaging in one element of it.
Yeah, which like even then we're still happy with getting non-Christians there, and hopefully like they'll have a good memory of church, and hopefully they
Right.
see church as a place that's like safe to go.
Their
Like
kids, they'll take their kids
relevant.
there when they're 40.
Yeah. So even then there might be more stuff that happened than we know of. Hopefully, like that's our hope and prayer. But the fact is we didn't see it as like really working. So we
And it wasn't the
changed.
best we could do, right? Like I
Yeah.
love the idea of planting a seed, but we weren't comfortable with that being a cop out for being like,
Yeah.
well, we did what we could do, and God will plant we planted the seed, and God will bring someone to water it. Well,
Yeah.
like, yeah, we planted the seed, but if you have a watering can and you just say someone else can plant it and you don't do it yourself the most you can, you're not doing what you're called to. We're not called to just do the minimum or to do what we're comfortable with. We need to like find and strategize new ways to do the most we can for the gospel.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell a little bit kind of what we ended up doing with Wednesdays there?
Yeah. So yeah, this came out of a youth leader retreat where we just sort of talked about where we're at and how can we improve. And I don't know if you were already thinking like of doing something like that, but just wanting to get your leaders involved, or if that just came
I
out
knew
of
what I wanted. I just wanted you guys to come to a realization yourself without it being
yeah,
my idea.
yeah, smart. Yeah. So then
Manipulative is really what it
yeah,
was.
just paid another youth leader to bring it up so that all the youth leaders like, yeah, that is a good idea. Anyway, yeah. So then we changed Friday night to just less church, but like our engagement, kind of things. So still a little bit of like a tiny bit, whatever that looked like, of the gospel or telling them what we do on Wednesdays or something. And then Wednesday nights were small groups. So right off the bat, Wednesdays was pretty small, but it was like the church kids, kind of like what we expected,
Which was the plan.
which was good. Because I think that unfortunately church kids are sheltered, and that's part of the issue. So some church kids didn't come to Fridays because they're like honestly like
Most.
too scared, or their parents were too scared, which is pretty ridiculous if you ask me.
Yeah, they thought that it was like a drug, like an opium den, basically.
Yeah, I don't know. So they didn't come to Fridays, or it was just the fact that we just didn't have a great discipling area, right? So like we had all these community kids coming, but it's really hard to disciple deep when you're kind of focusing on like, wow, all these people that don't know Jesus are here. So yeah, moved to Wednesdays. So obviously stopped doing worship on Fridays. Started. So it would have been going into my 4th year, because we stopped doing worship when I left on Fridays and started doing it on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was still interning at the park, but I still helped out on Wednesday nights.
Well, that's one of the reasons we got rid of worship, was because we had nobody who could sing it.
But it ended up being a good choice anyway.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to get rid of it already, but it's kind of like there's this cultural thing with worship. It's like, you can't get rid of worship. It's worship,
Yeah.
Like, it's worship.
Right.
You can't not do worship. Watch me. That's kind of was my attitude on it. But.
Yeah, so we switched to Wednesday night small groups, which were pretty much kind of normal. Like we did alpha, we tried some just like a little bit of just preaching ourselves, or we did Bible project videos or different video series.
We did alpha. Alpha was the first one.
Alpha was the kickoff.
Youth alpha,
which actually worked well. Like
it worked.
In the community coming.
We had community kids coming, and one of my favorite stories is Matt Baker, who's now just got announced as Hope City's. He lived in Beaumont, but worked at Hope City, and he lived right by me actually. And so he's telling me that he's at Tim Hortons, and there's like these really bad kids like breaking stuff and like getting kicked out and swearing and throwing stuff. And then one kid's getting kicked out, and as they're leaving, they turn, and he's thinking to himself, he's like, these are the worst behaved kids I've ever seen. Like, he's like, I literally would fight these children if I wasn't an adult. He didn't say that, but that's what I'm projecting onto him for that. But he was saying like they were that bad. I don't want this to go out and somebody like Matt Baker was threatening children in Beaumont. But he saw us how bad these kids were. And then as they're leaving, they're like, hey man, are you going to Alpha at the church tonight? Are you going to Alpha at the church tonight? And they're like, yeah, we'll see you at Eaglemont. And he's like, oh my goodness, those are definitely Jeff's kids. Like,
which we definitely had like some of the worst kids from Friday constantly show up to Wednesday nights, and I don't understand why.
It was the worst. It was the absolute worst ones.
We're like, oh, couldn't have the better kids showed up? But
like it was supposed to strategically be this transition of like kids that are like a little bit calmer and ready to start to take their faith seriously, come to Wednesdays from Friday. That was the funnel of it. And then like, like little evil kids were coming instead, which is awesome because they were actually getting, it was challenging, but it was cool. Mm-hmm. So that was really sweet. And then so then we kind of figured out like we really needed to strategize our Friday to be like a funnel. Like I said, like Friday's the wide open, reach all people, no worship, just get them a Bible illiterate world to understand that there is a God, and to basically the whole idea was walk away with a deeper understanding of the Bible being relevant and that Jesus loves them than they did when they walked in. And then invite them into a place where we can go a little bit deeper on Wednesday. And then at the same time, that's where hopefully our church kids would be ready to kind of disciple and intermingle and influence them positively, because it was a little bit daunting to have maybe a homeschooled kid or like church sheltered kid come into a Friday night where kids are talking about how they were having, sex that week. Like, honestly, like I guess that was hard for some of these kids. So, So yeah, that was kind of strategy. So then I don't even remember how we came to it, but on a Friday we decided that preaching they didn't listen to. Then we tried to do alpha videos on Friday, but I love alpha, but 20 minutes was way too long. They weren't engaging in that. Like these were completely
Mhm.
church illiterate kids. Alpha is so good for kids that are like ready to ask questions. These kids didn't have any questions. We were trying to put questions in
Yeah.
their head. They didn't even understand preschool Bible stories. So we decided we would make our own alpha videos, which was some of the most fun stuff we've ever done. We painted a green screen. We only had a T5i. We didn't have a great camera, but we started literally acting out like Veggie Tales, like not Veggie Tales. So I didn't have vegetables or something like that, but like we would go through like Veggie Tales, like preschool stories, because we're like, well, if stats show us that kids are Bible illiterate, we should get into like those stories. So we did David and Goliath, and we used like all these costumes that we had. We would buy costumes on Amazon. We did Daniel and the Lion's Den, and the lion was this weird dog outfit with like a leg warmer, a fuzzy leg warmer for a mane. But we captured the meme, right? Like it was like, we know this is cheesy, but we're gonna make it totally apparent that this is cheesy. Like this isn't like, hey kids, Toby Mac put out a new album, or like that type of cheesy.
And it is dope.
It is straight fire. Fire. It is hot, hot, hot fire. You know what I mean? Like, so we're trying to like be fully aware that this is a meme. Like these videos are bad, but they're actually, we tried to kind of steal the best of what Alpha was doing. We had the white background and just like two people talking to the camera, and then kind of doing as they told the Bible story, with maybe put the verses at the bottom, but mostly paraphrased, have them acted out. So like one was like, no, not Noah's Ark, Jonah and the whale, and then so Trebby was Jonah. He fell into the water. We made it look like he was underwater, and then when the whale ate him, Pac-Man came and ate him, like wobble wobble wobble, wobble across the screen. And it was so stupid, but kids said, like kids we wouldn't do one week, and they'd be like, unchurched kids were like, we want more of those Bible videos. They're funny, and we'd throw in like references to popular memes that week. Like we were kind of on top of it. Whatever was happening in culture, we would kind of throw in a little bit of that. A good example, and I actually think this is a good way to look at it, like, you know who does a very similar thing but even better than we did it, is Gritty, the Philadelphia Flyers mascot. Like, so stupid and so dumb, and but like the culture of like, he's a meme, right? He is everything about him is so bizarre and such a meme that, but you'll want to see what he does next. And we kind of captured that, and we're able to kind of implant, psychologically trick kids into thinking they were watching something that was a meme, and walking away with like the simplest idea of
Yeah.
like David, or like Goliath, like, yeah, what's the giant in your life? Maybe it wasn't the full theological like exegesis of that story, but it's like, if you have a giant in your life, whatever it is, someone is a bully, a parent, a stepdad, whatever it is, your God will help you to conquer those giants, but you have to have faith and you have to follow him, right? Like you have to go to him.
Yeah.
And kids caught on to that.
Yeah. Like we were trying to give them the most Bible we could in that context. Cause like, yeah, if you do a full church service, kind of like we had, it's like they won't pay attention or they just won't come. And then you won't have an audience to hear the gospel. But if you make it, at least like entertaining or kind of weirdly campy and it just works, like, yeah, no kid is going to expect the highest quality because you're like, oh yeah, that's Jeff on the screen. So obviously it's not going to be this like, it doesn't have to be this professionally
No,
produced thing because it's for them. And I think kids
it's
can,
it's self-aware. It
yeah,
was
and they realize it's more authentic than some random person they don't know trying to be all serious and like talking, I'm sorry, but in like talking like this, and like, and that can be really good when people are engaged, but when it's some random kid
Well, like a video,
watching this
honestly,
thing.
a video nowadays, like having a talking head just preach to a camera with no edits or whatever, you might as well just be preaching. Like it's just,
Yeah.
it doesn't, you need to find, that is creative communication. How can we work the narrative and the message into what we want to do without it just being a man or a woman talking on a stage or on a screen? Like that's what people are running into right now with Zoom with this pandemic, is like, turns out it's not that exciting. It's just a digital version of the same thing. Like, how can we
Right.
be creative with this? And that's what people are navigating now. But it worked really well. And then I guess to launch into that got kids thinking about it. And then we'd say, if you want to know more about this, Wednesday night, it's not, there's no lasers. We had some decent lighting. We invested. We started with fluorescents and pumpkins on the stage, and it got to like moving lights and lasers. And it was as simple as spending only like maybe $200 at Long and McQuaid on used lasers. It'd be amazed at how much a smoke machine and a couple lasers can change the feel. And feeding them, we fed them every week, and that was all made it really, really fun. But then we started like saying, come to Wednesdays. And man, like when you like, we had a plan and we said, yeah, kids will come from Friday and then they'll start to, love Jesus. But like, you don't actually know if it's going to work or not. You're like, oh, I hope this works. And that's what happened though. We have kids now that are going to go to Bible college, or planning to, at least at this point, that are graduating, that I saw leading worship this year for your youth this year, who were in the community and had no faith. Like, families had no faith, like the last people you'd expect. And that was the process. And the hard thing to take was that, we had 200 kids coming on a Friday at some point. And I think I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but if you looked at like what we had in a month, we'd have like 600 unique kids coming in like 2 months or something like that. I think it was like something like 350 unique kids coming on in 1 month. And over a year, it was like 800 or something like that. So our orbit, to use church terms, was quite high. But of those 800 kids, we just weren't comfortable with that. We wanted them to, it wasn't good enough to just have them show up, right? So we ended up going to Wednesdays. And I think the fruit of that was, 5, 6 kids that really, really we saw the fruit of, in the immediate. And obviously that's not enough, but I always say that wasn't enough, but that was worth it. Like that was cool. For me anyways.
For sure. Like, we would have loved to have a giant youth group of all these Christian kids flooding to Jesus. But I think that we can at least say we tried our best, and there is fruit. There are kids that are now, like Jeff said, going to Bible college because of the process that they've been in for years, and the work that like our youth group put in.
Well, and the other thing, honestly, like even if they didn't come to Wednesdays, I'd say that the majority of those, like, let's say it was a consistent 100 out of the 150 to 200 kids that would come on a Friday, I'd say probably over half of them would have considered themselves believers in Jesus. I don't think they knew exactly what that meant, but I think they would have prayed when we asked. I'm sure they put their head down and they would pray, and they would.
Like we had a couple of the worst kids, like that group that Jeff was talking about, that was like swearing, and then they're like, "Oh, you're going to church tonight?" A couple of them, when we did Alpha, and we're like, "So do you believe in God?" And they're like, "Oh yeah." And we're like, "What?" That doesn't make any sense.
And then one kid turned to the other one, and he's like, you don't believe in Jesus, you're an atheist. He's like, no, I'm a Christian now. He's like, since when? He's like, since like 3 weeks ago. Like, but like you would have never guessed. They were still acting terribly, which I think is a lesson. Like, it's a process. We always want this like walk to the altar, and that's in our Pentecostal history, like kind of pattern, right? That altar moment, that change. But for me, my strategy, and maybe some people won't love this, I believe the Holy Spirit can come and will, and often does, have these like encounters and changes people in the moment, and they have this experience. But I actually, in my experience, it's been more just a process. Like, they don't even know when it happened. It was just this thing that happened. And so I think probably we had 50% of our kids, that's just a number I'm picking out, but I would guess somewhere around 50% of those kids that would have called themselves a Christian. In my opinion, they weren't good Christians, but whatever that means, but they didn't fully grasp it, but they believed in Jesus, and they believed he loved them, and they believed he died on the cross. So work your theology through that. I wasn't comfortable with it being enough. Like, I don't know where they're at today, but they were, the strategy we had of like this slow process and making it fun and giving them little bits at a time and strategically bringing them on a journey towards a self-realization of Christ was working on some level. And we did have proof of that, but I wanted them to like love Jesus and read, you know what I mean? We wanted that depth, and that was hard to find. But it doesn't mean that you don't have success in the stories. If they only make it half the way towards your goal, that's still better than them never encountering your ministry at all.
Yeah.
So I guess, like I said, the whole point of this chat, I want to talk about being creative and thinking outside the box. So I guess for you now, and I'm not expecting you to have the answer for this, but in a new role, being involved in more of the overarching story of what we're doing for church on a Sunday, one day pastoring your own church, let's say, or whatever comes down the pipe, like how can we do a better job as church, not just youth groups, but just ministry, of thinking outside of the norm, taking some of these things that we've learned as to like creativity. I'm not saying we need to all get our friend who's a little socially awkward and dress him up like a clown and have him come out and have an ice cream eating contest. Although we did do that on a Sunday once and had his dad challenge him, which was one of the
That was
greatest.
great. Yeah.
It was one of the greatest things, and the church loved it. Like, it was so funny.
It's true.
Because fun should happen in church.
I was just gonna say the church needs to be more fun.
Like we think because we don't wear suits and ties anymore that, oh, well, we're super chill. We have coffee break. Well, I'll bring them in. Like, not fun.
Yeah.
If you're singing "Oh Happy Day" doesn't mean everyone's happy. Just newsflash. Nobody's happy when you sing "Oh Happy Day." I'm not happy. I hate that song.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I don't know. The church, like moving forward, I think you can take lessons of like what we did with youth is like you really need to know your culture. And that was a huge thing. We knew that the culture of kids is dumb stuff that's funny for no reason. So we took that and we ran with it. And then you need to know like where, knowing your culture is very important because you need to know where people are and what the next step is.
And not just your church culture, the culture you're trying to reach. That's
the culture of the people around you. Because I think still like so many churches want that, like we talked about, it's a process for a lot of people. And that's the growing statistic with unchurched people, is that it's a long process for them to get to the point of saying like, yeah, I'll accept Jesus as right. So like, even like a lot of churches are just hoping, and not that like this is a bad thing, but like hoping that they'll have someone that will raise their hand to say, yeah, I'm a Christian. And then we just leave that, when really you need to invest in a longer process and saying like, I don't know, even if it's just like, okay, if you want to know what that's like, or like, no, I don't know, just kind of digging more into the process of it, and not like the one time, oh good, that person's a Christian now, thanks for coming.
Are you, so correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is you need to have a stronger, more set and definable assimilation plan from step one to the end product.
Yeah, I think that's like super key in the churches. And then even like thinking of like how I can make worship more creative and engaging is pretty hard, because it's like like I said before, for youth, it's like it's something that we don't do outside of like it's weird culturally, I'd say. Not like I grew up in the church, so it feels very normal to me. But if I was to like walk in, no church background, walk in like, why are we singing? What does this mean? So you also need to like really explain everything and why it's important. I think that really helps people just be like, oh, okay, then I'll stand here and
like one thing I would do when we do our opening, I'd always try and say, just so you guys know, this isn't a concert. If it's your first time here, we're singing to God. It's one of the ways we worship. And then you and me started working on songs, because if you never came before and you're singing to some dead East Indian guy named Jesus, who also is a lamb, and we're talking about his blood and his body and eating and drinking it, like literally, I just described what we're doing. Like, I know that most songs don't reference his ethnic history, but maybe they should. I don't know. But I'll leave that for smarter theologians. But like, seriously though, that's weird. That's so freaking weird. If I was an unchurched person, it's like, I'm trying to think. I can never remember worship songs, but there was a couple of them back in the day where it's like, the body and the blood of the Lamb. What's that old 90s one? It's like the Godhead 3 in 1. What?
Oh yeah. Now I can't even remember what song that's
I just remember the line, because we would always do this thing where we go like, put our fingers up 3 and 1 to make fun.
What do you mean we would always do this?
So here's
actions.
Oh crap! I've outed myself here. We used to do we've done we used to do, this is how cool youth groups used to be. We did a youth choir tour because people in small towns definitely wanted to see other people their age do choirs, and we just wanted to go on tour, right? And man, it was so fun. But there's this one song I can't remember, and one of the lines was God had 3 in 1, and we were like, there's the Lion and the Lamb, the God had 3 in 1, and we were like, we didn't
Oh,
like
how
this.
great is our God? That's what it's from.
Is that what it's from?
Yeah.
I
The
should.
Godhead 3 in 1. That's the
Father, Spirit, yeah,
Son.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
line.
yeah. And they were like 3 and 1, and do this like, but it wasn't like for actions because we thought actions were cool. It was like we were making fun of, we were being dumb. I just remember that. I don't know why I should have never said that because now I look like a loser. But anyways, that's okay. I'll let myself look dumb on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird. Like that's a weird. The Father 3 in 1, Father, Spirit, Son. What does that mean to somebody?
Like it's great theologically because it's true, but yeah, what if you're reading that for the first time with no church background, you're just confused as this is happening. So right, you not that you want to avoid songs that may be a little bit more confusing, but you want to explain them and help people understand and constantly help people get to a place when if you're doing something in church, they're not just going to sit there and think, oh, this is useless to me and not get anything out of it. Totally. If you're going to do something like worship, if you're going to do communion, even though, well, not for, I guess you tell unchurched people that this is just for Christians. So that's another kind of awkward thing, but
you're not allowed to. Don't drink juice.
Don't you dare ever drink a
if
juice.
If you drink that juice, you're bringing on the judgment of the Lord.
Yeah, don't say that.
Just that type of juice. But I love Welch's.
Yeah. For me right now, I'm still like, I'm in my first year of pastoring, right? So I'm still trying to figure it out. I really want to try my best at growing some leaders so that I can pass off some things so that I can dream bigger, because I feel like there's just something more that God wants, but I kind of get in this rhythm of like doing the same thing over and over, just the normal like church stuff, just to prepare for Sunday, and then you do it again, right? And I don't have this opportunity to like try and be creative. So it's really a thing that you need to sit down and keep pushing for. Like, okay, where am I at? Where can we grow better? Like, get some creative people around you if you can, and just like brainstorm. And it's a time consuming thing, but you need to be able to do that, or else 10 years from now, you'll be doing the same thing that is going to be even more, behind, or even less, or more disconnected from the culture around you if you don't actually like continually strive for that.
Well, and I think that's probably what you just said there is an awesome kind of last thing to end this. There's like, we're already going quite long, but I think it's good. Yeah, there's some good stuff here. And frankly, we're just having fun talking about old stuff. But but
thanks for letting us hang out
and rant about the dumb stuff that we should have got fired for. The most effective time of my ministry as a youth pastor was we just started doing the craziest stuff before I end on that team thing, was like Halloween in June. I just said, we're going to dress up. I just said, well, let's do Halloween on June 10th. And everyone's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know. It's stupid. Let's just have the kids like dress up in Halloween costumes. And like Halloween in some church circles, you're not even allowed to say that. It's like, we're having a harvest party with candy and dressing up, or trunk or treat. But it's like, oh no, he said the evil word. He said the holiday which shall not be named, Halloween. it's like, and I was like, I don't care. So we literally named an event Halloween in June, and someone's like, Jeff, you can't do that. And my like go-to when people would say like, you can't do it, like, I'm trying to get fired. and like I kept pushing the envelope, and the more and I wasn't obviously actually trying to get fired, but the more I was like using that as my like mantra, like, I'm trying to see what I can get away with, not just to get away with to be dumb, but to see how far I could push the culture and how far I could get into like creative, weird things. And so like we sent kids in full Halloween costumes. To be honest, I wish some of them I was uncomfortable with, not like inappropriate in the sense of like sexually, but like one kid dressed up like the scariest monster I've ever seen, and one kid came to church dressed as a witch, and I was like, crap. And then we sent them most I was like, I forgot about that part, but like most of them were like spacemen or clowns, or like I dressed up as like Abraham Lincoln with like American tights and a top hat. It bordered on inappropriate, but I was trying to get fired. And anyways, we sent them, and they just literally went to everyone's house and went trick or treat. And this is why it's funny. I just picture like an elderly couple. I picture an elderly couple sitting. It's like June 10th. It's quite warm, sun's out, and hearing knock 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 trick or treat, and be like going and seeing these kids in like a clown outfit, a rabbit suit, and like I remember I have a clear picture like a spaceman outfit. Like, yeah, trick or treat with a sack for candy, and they're like, it's not October, and then maybe they give them something, maybe they don't. And then they go and sit down, and like 4 minutes later, trick or treat at the door again. And then they're like, they're like, it's not Halloween. This is weird. And then they maybe go give some marshmallows.
Yeah.
But by the third trick or treat at the door, that couple is legitimately, even if it's just a little bit, questioning in their mind as to whether they're wrong and it actually is Halloween. Like, kids went through the community, and whoever got the best, like some kids came back with an old easy bake oven. It kind of became like its own monster of like bigger or better. And kids were one kid brought back like an 8-month-old rotten Christmas tree that someone had in their backyard, and like the winning team got a Dairy Queen cake, a full-size Dairy Queen cake, and it was like one of our most hyped up and exciting events. And the kids lost their mind, and people in the community were like posting about it. One person was like, "You woke up my baby." I'm like, "Lady, it's 7:30. You're like, I don't care." People will always have an issue. You can't bow to everybody's concerns.
Yeah.
You want to be careful, but most people are like, this church was doing this outstanding. What a creative and funny thing. Like, I love this youth group. I love this community. Like, it's so funny.
When we were picking up the Dairy Queen cake, we went 3 leaders, me and two other leaders, dressed up because it was Halloween in June. Went to pick up a cake, and then one of the ladies in the line's like, "Oh, you guys are from 180."
Yeah,
like a parent that knew that her kid was coming to youth to dress up. Oh, it was so dumb. But like that's the thing. It was funny, and
people were
why not
asking for it? Why not? Now, like, okay, you think Halloween's evil? Well, I'm sorry, but like it led a lot of kids to church, and we did it. I can trust me. There was no Satan worship involved. It was all just fun and for the cause of the gospel. I believe Jesus can redeem anything. We have to be careful, doing things in the name of God. But honestly, I think I was fine with that. And I wasn't actually trying to get fired, but that was kind of the running joke. It's like, can we do this? I'm like, trying to get fired. Like, and that was kind of like a metaphor for like, we're trying to push the limits here. We're trying to see what we can do and still be good stewards of what we have. And so it was great. But I would take it back to before what you said to kind of wrap up is without like, I'm a creative guy. I'm a weird guy in a lot of ways. I feel like I just got lucky because the world caught up to how weird I already am, and humor matched what I thought was funny in my mid-20s. Teenagers got weird enough to catch up to my weirdness in my mid-20s. It's really what happened. It was a perfect storm. But yeah, I had some good ideas and I had some creative things that came out of my mind, but it was that I actually I think the best thing we did was I engaged you guys as a team, and I brought you guys in on it because a lot of our best ideas came collaboratively. Not even just like I joked earlier and said, I had an idea and I wanted you guys to come to the realization and think it was your own, which is honestly a good leadership tactic. But most of the time it was just spitballing, getting into a meeting. What could we do here? What's the problem? Why doesn't what we're doing reach that? What could we do? And often we'd say, well, it would work if we could do that, but that's not church. We can't do that because it's not church. That's not what we've done. And then I'd say, well, let's risk it. Right. And we'd kind of take that attitude, make a memory, do something different, reach kids at all costs was really what it was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just you and me. We had Brendan, Jaden, who's now the youth pastor there, and other Trevi and Kyle and seeing these guys rise up out of that and take like challenges. I guess one last thing I don't want to leave without saying this. Trevi went much more than ever just some like comedic character. He went from being socially awkward to like one of that whole group of like bad kids, like of 30 kids were coming, I'd say at one point, like 15 to 20 maybe bad kids, like unchurched bad kids coming to Alpha because he was meeting them for coffee, taking them out for coffee, texting them, discipling them. And honestly
the best youth leader
was always with the kids, was taking them out. Trevi is the greatest youth leader you could ever ask for in every level. Comedic, but discipling, yeah, a little bit socially limited in some ways, maybe misunderstood, but man, he killed it, and he grew because we gave him opportunities, and we would bring him into the higher level conversations, and sometimes he'd say some crazy stuff, but it was awesome, and he brought the mood up. And he's more than just a character on a shirt or whatever. He drove so much what we did. So a lesson there, I think, is to never underestimate what you can do with a leader, or what a leader can achieve if you're willing to work with them and put them in situations for them to succeed. It just might look differently than other volunteers. But yeah, our strength was our community with our leadership. Nobody had more fun than our leaders.
We did have a ton of fun. It was a great team.
And we would hang out after every Friday. We wasted hundreds of maybe thousands of dollars
I can't imagine how much we spent
on going to Original Joe's after
every Friday.
We could have started a small business or something with that money, like invested it. But we
I don't want to think about it. Okay.
I spent more than you did.
Yeah, I know.
And but we spent lots of money, and the community and the culture of our team was great. So maybe there's a future podcast on that. We'll have to one day maybe take this long podcast and maybe pick one or two things and stick to them. But like if you're looking to be entertained and learn how to be creative and take a couple of tidbits out of this, that I think that there's some good stuff here. So yeah, I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. Any last thoughts? Any final things that are on your mind, or any fears, deep dark secrets? I was telling you
I'm terrified of sharks.
Yeah, me too. I was telling Brennan before this started that I'm really scared that the one COVID conspiracy that no one's thinking about is that this is the Truman Show, and this is a TV show based around me. That's the only conspiracy theory that I'm worried about. But that's a podcast for another day, I guess. So anyways, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, how can they do that? Do you want to share your email or your MySpace?
Yeah, MySpace, definitely. Brennan at Eaglemontchurch.ca. Down to talk. Not that I'm an expert on anything, but I don't know. It's always helpful to like bounce ideas off anyone. So I don't know.
Collaborate. And that's Brennan, Brennan, not Brendan with a D. Brennan.
I usually let people call me whatever name they hear, so I guess I should spell it out when it's an email. You need to do that right.
Yeah, that's why I started calling you Boo Boo on our missions trip to Ukraine. I guess we'll end with that. In Ukraine.
Ukraine is another story.
Yeah, that should be a conversation. His sisters treated him like a bit of a baby because he's the youngest, so I started making fun of them. It was actually to make fun of them and saying like, "Oh, he's a little Boo Boo bear, Boo Boo, little Brenny Boo Boo." And then he got mad because I kept calling him Boo Boo. But now, literally, we're here 6 years later, and he's Boo Boo in everyone's phone. He answers to Boo Boo. It's like this running joke. But yeah, Brennan Jenkins at Brennan at Eaglemontchurch.ca if you want to get a hold of him. So, anyways, we'll wrap it up. We could talk forever, and maybe we'll do more down the road. But yeah, thanks for being on.